Okay. So Irene and I were beginning to talk about, and I want to save this conversation. I'm just going to touch on it because if somebody saw the last video that I posted on YouTube last night, it was the result of something that Dave had told us was going to happen. And then here's evidence that he captured in video form. I'm going to just tuck that off because I know Dave wants to expand on that on Thursday, and we're going to give him the opportunity to do that. So we'll circle back to his conversation when it gets to be next Thursday. He'll have probably some more clarity to offer us, but in terms of what he told us about contact and what we've known was going to be imminent, um, Dave showed us some proof of it after his podcast on Thursday. So I will leave it there and let him expound on it later. Um, I just continue to tell people get yourself ready. There's going to be more of this. And the only way that you're going to experience it is to get in the same zone that vibrationally the rest of us who experience these things are at. I I just be repeating myself from things that we've talked about before when I talk about your own preparation. But if there was ever a time to tend to your own flame and get yourself in alignment, now's the time. It determines what we get to experience in this realm and where we're straddling into the next. None of this is coincidental and none of this is fairy tale. Earth is in a cosmic cycle, and we are here during that cycle. She's almost in the next realm, which is why we can sense it. We vibrate at the same level she is. So the things that she has an awareness of, so do we. And as extraordinary as those things may sound, get your vibration there and you decide for yourself. I'm not here to tell people and beat them over the head with what I know to be true because of my own experiences. Get yourself there and have your own experiences is what my recommendation is going to be. So I'm going to listen to Irene for a little while because she's here and she always has something interesting to offer. And today's your day, pal.
Well, thank you. And actually, I have a question for you. So,
Mm-hmm.
what does it mean for you when there is when somebody shows there's evidence in the sky? What does it mean for you? What does it truly mean for you?
Uh, well, the differences between what Dave experiences and what I experience are two different realms of focus. And it's not that I'm not open to beyond Earth sentience. That just happens to be, and I get to call on what Dave has shared with us because most people, when we think of the disclosure things that are being referred to now, and when you hear the terms UFO or UAP or alien or whatever it is, it's clear that that phenomenon exists. If you're paying at least a little bit of attention to it, you can't deny that these things aren't around here. And don't you get me started on the long term prospects for us being the only intelligent life in the universe. Anyway, my focus had always been on my connection with inner Earth and where that's expanding. And that's just as extraordinary as the things, off planet. We're beginning to understand that, look at the shrouding around Shasta. Do we not believe that that is ships coming in and out to visit? Of course they are. So it would only make sense to the rest of us that those beings that are visiting there are certainly in touch with the higher beings that are in Telos and in many other parts of the world. Here is where I think it was part of what I was going to experience was going to be to articulate what I saw in Telos, only to broaden my mind to Telos is not the only inner Earth city. And there's reasons why these things are being revealed to us now. Look at all the catastrophes going on the planet. It's just more evidence and indications of the solar influence on our planet. And we see it as our planet, but it's taken place within our entire solar system. Changes are taking place like they have here forever, but Earth is in an evolutionary stage of her own. And we're about ready to slip into her new elevation. And in order for us, as we've said before, to experience that on our own level, we have to match her vibration. That's all we've been talking about. And as much as I've resisted the idea that there was not a 1, 2, 3, 4 process to get where I am, or anybody who's had kind of a broader perspective of higher dimensions, it appears as though my guides are telling me to just put that notion aside. And yes, we're in the process of trying to design a program that's 3 or 4 days long and gets you all of the information you need from a fundamentals perspective, where you would need to get yourself to begin with so that you can have these connections. And we all agree that that's find a meditative state that you can find, and then all these things will be revealed to you. I've resigned myself to the fact that we need to put this in the same kind of understandable, comprehensible language that third dimensional beings are used to. And they're used to being told, do this, do this, do this, and do this, and this will be the outcome. So, as much as I didn't think that everybody's journey is the same, and it's not, there is more fundamental information that people need to be aware of. Now, there's this project that I'm working on in Arizona. I'm near Sedona on some energetic space like you just can't believe. It's being kind of built out as a wonderful, intimate little retreat area right on top of all this property. It's been said, and I certainly resonate with the fact that it's on the site of a former temple. And if you give any consideration to the previous Lemurian land masses and the territory that was Telos, we think of Telos as being the city underneath Mount Shasta. Well, that in fact is true. That is the city of Telos. But Telos long ago was a territory that stretched, from, almost the western side of North America all the way down. So it's not unusual that this spot is, part of Telos. In my mind, the energy kind of feels like Shasta is like North Telos. And this area that I'm sitting on top of is like South Telos. So this energy is, what comes to mind is not to be trifled with. I've heard some stories about some other people that were here, some renters that were going to be here, that it was just too energetic for them to stay. We all believe that this is for a little more advanced level of individuals energetically. This is not for the uninitiated. So, part of what we're talking about in terms of educating others, that I don't know, this is not the place to bring people, as newbies or, just seeking it out. This is like more advanced energy, that's all I can tell you. Where Shasta is a place for, it's where I had my awakening. It's where I crossed over to, a broader awareness of things in higher dimensions. And maybe that was the place to do that. There is a difference in the energy. And the more I'm here, I'm trying to articulate the differences. And Shasta, powerful as it is and palpable as it is a softer energy than this. Here, there there's a couple of amplifiers on the property. One of which is a copper pyramid that's probably maybe 12 or 15 feet tall. And energetically, it's amazing. Typically, at the end of the day, I would go sit there and just kind of, take in the energy at the end of the day. And the last time I was there, which was the day before yesterday, I had been sitting and just kind of taking it in and didn't want to leave. Well, the sun was starting to set because it was going to be about 5 o'clock, and I wanted to get up. And as much as I tried to get up off that seat, it was like there was a magnetic pull for my ass to get back in the seat. And I laughed at myself when I did that, because half of me said I didn't want to leave because the energy was just so pleasant. And then when I actually tried to get up, it was like I got pulled back into the chair. Now, a couple of people have suggested, well, it's probably just fatigue from all the stuff you're doing, and I gave that some consideration. That might have been true the 2 days before that, but this day, the circumstances were different. So all I can tell you is that there's a different kind of pull here that one day I'll have the words to do it justice. So we expect that this area is going to be ready for small groups right after the first of the year, like mid-January. So the clock is ticking. There's some things that need to be done. The dwellings here are perfect. And the area that it's on, the pyramid on this property is just one of these elemental pieces. There's a spiral out in the back that has energy that is chakra driven. Everything here has just kind of been felt out. And what's been, drawn on the surface for us to see is just people's representation of what's in the earth. And so it kind of gives you a visual idea of what's there. And then it's easier to kind of connect with it. That's the way it is for me. But we'll see. The entire energy area is charged up like this. And even though this is kind of, it's a residential area, rural for certain, rugged, most definitely, and almost canyon-like, adjacent to the property, Oak Creek runs right by. So it's unusual to think in high desert, it's about 3,300 feet elevation here, that there's water and that right in the same area. It doesn't equate with what you think of when you think of Arizona. But there's something special about this place. And I know the objective for everybody that's here is to get it operational as soon as possible, because we understand, how the clock is ticking. So I'm going to take a breath for a little bit and hand it back to you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, beautiful. It's always nice to hear, your own sharing and your own insights, and what's up for you. Yeah, and I've been in Sedona. I love the area, even though I've been there not for too long. But it's so great when you open yourself up. You can just absorb or feel the area so much out, and it is definitely much different than Mount Shasta or New Mexico. I've been there for a longer time, and it's also high desert, and it's really pristine and very easy to perceive other energies in a very different way than in Mount Shasta. It feels Mount Shasta is kind of like more earth-like, or like it's higher dimensional, but it's more earthly integrated, and it feels more that Sedona is more kind of like galactic kind of energy coming in and out. It's kind of more less earthy in a way. And it makes sense in a way, because I don't see there's too many like big mountains and like big lush, the balance with mountains, and it's not as close to the ocean and the water. It seems a different kind of balance with the earth. And so it feels more exposed to the galactic frequencies. But I do,
Yeah, go ahead.
and it does feel, yeah, it's much more open to the uh, intergalactic travel, so to speak, whatever. Anyway, I'll leave it there. But I do also feel like as the Earth has been changing and it keeps on changing and rebalancing itself, I do feel somehow it's opened up for more balanced frequencies that are more nurturing for the Earth itself. Um, and not as much anymore for exploitation, if that makes sense. Um, anyway, so that's a bit what I have to say about that. But yeah, the synchronicities I've been feeling also with Dave, and I didn't know what he was going to share, but a couple of days ago, I have definitely seen not necessarily those light bulb ships, or you call it ships, you call it consciousness, whatever you want to call it. You know, I usually see them in these big lenticular clouds, and the last couple of days, as they were expecting the northern lights, was kind of like looking out, but it was really overcast a bit. But I did see a different kind of light in the sky, and I could very clearly see these kind of lenticular clouds that are also over Mount Shasta. Usually I see them mostly around volcanic mountains. So, because I mean, it's all interacting with each other, and there's a very natural uh, component to it as well. So, meaning, uh, I feel what we're moving into actually very naturally is to become aware that we're naturally connected with the planet, and that the planet is not isolated, but we're naturally interconnected with other life forms, and then the earth itself as well. And I feel it's really important, if it's your curiosity, to ask yourself the question. I've said it before, but who are you? Who am I? How am I related to this or that? Or I I wonder, what's the planet? How is it orbit? Just asking yourself these questions, open yourself up to more understanding. It will become very natural, and it's not as far out there as it may be exposed sometimes. Like, oh, there's these beings doing this and that, and it almost feels like a separate. And I feel there's a lot of, especially now, because everything starts to open up, like kind of like everything is out in the open, right? You can have access to all kind of information on YouTube, and everybody has their opinion and their thinking and their danger and their own heaviness or lightness to it. And it's really, I think it's important to feel also there's a naturalness, and the clearer you get and the more honest you ask yourself a question from within, you don't have to so much seek it outward, but it reveal itself to you naturally. So for me, for instance, wherever I live, it can be very much geographically so that you don't see as much ships or whatever, or it's not for you to see that, or you see maybe more, like for me, I see lights. I started to see these light bulbs in trees, like big blue light bulbs, for instance. And with the ships I see now, like I saw them for the first time really in Mount Shasta, and I asked when I left, if I'm leaving, I want you to come with me, and I did. Then I started to see them in my place, because it's also an invitation. You have to ask for it also.
Yeah, what would make somebody think that that interaction, from off planet only takes place in particular places on the planet?
Yeah.
What do you think prevents them from going anywhere they wish on Earth? Nothing stops them from that. We have 3D ideas about how to get places and how you propulse yourself from place to place. That is not the way that they function. But it was interesting that you were talking about a moment ago about when you begin to think about who you are, because Dave was talking about that the other day. When he meets new people, and he is curious about them and they ask, who are you? Well, from their third dimensional perspective, they want to know what he's done and, all those measurements for how we determine who a person is. And Dave came to that conclusion, look, what I did is not who I am. Who I am is what's blossoming and what is being brought to the surface for me. Um, it's I'm beginning to see the people that have an awareness can speak to some type of change that took place like that. And they no longer look at themselves from that 3D perspective. And here is where it gets challenging to have conversations with the people that we've had conversations with in the past, people we work with, our family, people that we communicate with. We no longer talk about the same things anymore because there's new revelations being brought to us that's totally oblivious to everybody else. And so when we get used to the idea, and I think it's easier once we're focusing on ourselves to not be distracted by what we used to miss when I didn't get up, 30 or 40 emails in a day like I used to, or when I got multiple telephone calls looking for me. When that doesn't happen anymore, I no longer question, well, how come people aren't looking for me anymore? I am comfortable looking for the things that matter to me. And now that I've been given access and the ability to see things from higher perspectives, straddle that between here and there, that's when I find other tribes show up and we can have conversations about that phenomenon. Not that we're matching what's happening to us, but we just know inherently that that magic is not what anybody else is paying attention to, but the tribe is. And each person has their own experience. No one's looking for it to be the same. Not looking for it to match Paula's or match Irene's. I'm looking for connections that show the thread is the same between what we feel, not necessarily what we experience. Because if we're going to embrace the fact that everybody is a sovereign being with a unique gift that's special to them, that again, I think it's my obligation to help you get there. Whatever I have that can assist you along your way, I understand, first of all, it's unique. And I'm not here to influence it in any way because I'm here to just support you to become whoever you are. And in return, I get the same from others. So the gifts that I'm unwrapping aren't like anybody else's. But I see how they all thread together when the group comes together. And when we start to think about solution oriented tasks, now you see who's going to play what role. We didn't need replication. We didn't need one person that could, six people that could all do the same thing. We needed six people that had all individual things that addressed, what we were going to do next. And that's the beauty of the tribe. Now that we've had it's over a year since we've been doing these podcasts and talking about this phenomenon. You can just feel the energy of the tribe, and we don't need to be anywhere near one another. We all get the vibration from where we are. So here is where you begin to have a physical sensation of what it's like to be connected to everybody when they're not standing next to you. Your turn, Paul.
Well, good morning, everybody. How are you all
Good
doing?
morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you all. Yeah, I'm doing well. Just doing my check-in just to listen and experience and discover. I was in Los Angeles I just came in on the red eye last night. I was hoping to meet up with Dave, but I couldn't. My work would not,
Oh,
didn't allow, my schedule was just too much this time. So maybe I'm really looking forward to connecting with him when I make it back to LA area. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just checking in, seeing how everybody's doing. It's unique times for sure. And to your point, I'm feeling the energy a lot. It's really increasing. Um, and it represents itself in events in the news. You know, I don't see it separate, right? What we're feeling within ourselves is definitely expressing from out. And the most recent thing, and I've never heard of this, maybe it's happened in the past and I just hadn't paid attention, but um, people from Iceland are having to evacuate an entire town. And it's really these earthquakes or something else. It's literally shaking and baking. And an entire town has to leave. And I feel like, unless you're really just in the trenches of thought within your own self and your own issues and your own work, you've got to pull your head up and say, my goodness, is something bigger is happening, you know? And I do feel like it's helping people that have been invited to wake up that maybe didn't take the opportunity are looking back and saying, oh, that opportunity I had to look deeper and I chose not to then. I'm remembering and I'm taking this opportunity now. So it's very interesting as it plays out. Yeah. What do you all think of that Iceland thing and these other things?
it's just the next one. But the difference, in my opinion, is that here is where, with some modicum of advance notice, that people are actually taking notice and moving and doing something for it. We forget we're just these little critters crawling on the planet. And these catastrophes, when we look at them from our intelligent three-dimensional mind, wondering how in the world we placed ourselves here, when we're a byproduct, just like think of ants in a garden and all of a sudden the hose came through. Yeah, it's going to disrupt everything on a level that you can't control. Here, we're very much like that right now. We keep seeing reports of flooding, tsunamis, earthquakes, this volcanic eruption that is going to be triggered by earthquakes. We're finally putting that into some perspective rather than just seeing these as isolated incidents. And it was 2 years ago when I started to examine the phenomenon of earthquakes. And the first couple of days that I looked at it and saw the reports of it, and I was looking at things that were on the USGS website, anything that was a 2.5 or higher. There were hundreds a day, hundreds. I had no idea. You only heard about these, things that happened that were significant every now and then in areas where they didn't. But there are so many of these that are taking place in areas that haven't been before. I live in Santa Rosa, California. We had one last year, a 4.3, like 4 kilometers away from the house. I could feel it shake. That doesn't happen. The reference for it was the 1906 or '08 thing that happened in San Francisco that they kind of talked about on the same level. And that wasn't even close. So now when you see these phenomenon taking place, not just in California, but in other places in Nevada and in Arizona and places where, this isn't typical, you can see there's other terrestrial activity that's taking place. And if you watched any of that, you'll see different spots in areas where we haven't even experienced earthquakes in the past that are now popping up. Now, part of that, true, is we probably didn't have the technology, 40 years ago to track it the way that we do now. But holy cow, even with what we think we know now, we're certain that the level of what we'd experienced back then and what we're experiencing now is vastly different. That something else is happening. And so when we understand the energetic results of what's taking place, the Earth's about to shift again. And think about that solar energy that's coming our way. Either tonight or tomorrow, we're going to get hit by the latest CME that popped off, and we'll see what happens. But the sun is also creeping into solar maximum. So where we've seen a spike of energy over the last year or so, that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're about to step into a place where the frequency of that phenomenon is going to be accelerated for a while. So we'll see whether the pole shift takes place in 5 more years or whether it takes place, 5 more months. It's hard energetically to really discern the difference and prepare. So I don't look at the future. What I see coming is not where we're going to end up in these carbon bodies at where we think the end of third dimensional existence is. We're being prepared for the next vibratory level. Our beings are being prepared for us. And we get to that place, we'll vibrate it the same way that the Earth is. All of those preparations had been done. But in a three-dimensional mindset, we had no awareness of any of that, and certainly wasn't in the collective, or somewhere along the way, you think that it might have been mentioned in a philosophy class or a metaphysical class along the way, but we weren't trained about any of this. It's interesting that we're kind of the first ones to take it out in a way that we are. And Paula said something a little while ago that just triggered, seeds in my mind. That every time that we do this, especially among the uninitiated, we planted a seed. Chandra last week is a really good example of a seed that was planted, because she heard about my story in Telos, shortly after it happened. So that was 3 years ago. And then all of a sudden this summer, she was triggered again. I came back into it, and all of a sudden the next thing she had to do was visit Shasta, and you heard the results of what she experienced there. It wasn't a one and done. She got something she needed from the mountain, only to understand that there's more for her to receive, and it's certainly going to take her far beyond what the mountain gave her. I need a drink, so who's up?
Yeah, sure. I can kind of elaborate on the volcanic experiences and things, and also realizing we are born in the Western world, so we also look a little bit from the Western perspective. So I really keep that in mind, as I had to learn too when I travel to other places. People like natives have a different experience. So whatever we see in the news are kind of like outside of ourselves, even though we have expanded our consciousness. We never cease to learn. What it truly is like to be in a certain spot and living there. It's a totally different experience. So having said that, I feel, the earth changes have been going on for a long time. And what I've seen from here in the news, I saw it yesterday or last night or midnight, I don't even remember, that people, I think even from Iceland themselves, showed the webcams of what's going on. And it really feels, the more you've been innate and known with the land, the more close you are with the land, which I feel with the Icelandic people. I mean, it's so natural still, it's so rural. So few people really live there. And still quite very pristine, actually. I feel they're really still more in touch. So their way of preparation is not as as dangerous as like, oh my gosh, suddenly a big city needs to leave. Like what's so that's one thing. And people are also used to living with that. Like we in the Netherlands, we live below sea level. So we always know there is, even it's in the back of our consciousness that there can be flooding, even though it's really being taken care of non-stop 24/7. We don't always realize it, but I really feel it's in the subconscious that we're actually, I think our behavior is related to that we're actually, this time is given to be living here. And that's why we're big, I say we, I mean Dutch people, they're big traders who want to keep everybody a friend, because you never know. It's in the subconscious. We never truly know when we just know this country is not gonna be there at some point. And I think not many people realize it on their daily level, because we only live 70, 80, 90 years, right? So who cares, right? Who cares for the future? Most people. As long as I have my TV and I can go on a holiday three times a year, and, my needs are met and my children are fine, and I'm good, I leave it up to the rest. But uh, it, we are kind of like forced by nature, or with the elements, what's happening now, we're actually forced to start to feel, wow, who are we as human beings? What is our true role here? And what can we really do? So we are kind of like forced to be in touch with nature again, and to really listen. And it's really not a danger, it's actually like an opportunity. And also when you go to more like what kind of like more primitive areas where there's been volcanic eruptions, people know they're like their way of living is still, I don't want to say like from a victim perspective, but it's more like, I just live my daily life. If it's time to go, I'll go. So it's also really different yet again. So there's so many different perspectives from where people are. And they're the ones who are really affected by it. And so some of the people there, it's just like, well, if it's my time, it's my time, and so it's so different. And here you see it's such an individual process. How come some people go on a holiday? Well, there's a volcanic eruption and the whole family is gone, but they went on a holiday, so there is still like a certain lines, I say lines, like a guidance, or like a life force moving through you that moves you a certain way, or moves you to stay put. I don't feel obligated right now to go anywhere. And in my mind, I would say, oh, I wish I would be in a more pristine area or whatever. And I feel like I'm kind of like like below sea level. I'm suffocating, but there is a purpose that I'm here, and I'm okay. And as long as I know that, it's kind of like my lifeline. I just really trust it, and so I also trust it can be in a split second that I can change my mind in a split second, and then everything will open up to do something else. And I just know for a fact that it is, if it's with me, it's within everybody. It's our natural instinct. It's just with all this distraction, living in a big city and everything's being provided for, you don't even know what's all being needed to take care of us. That we have running water and a everything warm, and where does the food come from? And it's like it's still a 24/7. It's still people doing their work. We kind of like really got lost in that we're part of a chain, and it's in a way
We're
malfunctioning, but we're
cogs.
still living in this way.
We're cogs in a wheel. It's funny that thought came up. There's a Starbucks nearby, and so I have it in the morning. And I had a little more time to spend there the day before yesterday, and so while I was sitting there, you could see there were two young men dressed in suits who had parked at one of the tables, and they were conducting whatever business they were doing there, like through a Zoom platform. And when I saw them, that's exactly the phrase that popped in my head. They're freaking cogs in the wheel. They just happened to be parked here at Starbucks today for connectivity issues.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And, in some ways, well, in my book, it does kind of allude to that. In my book, it talks about, Mesopotamia, and it was this shift from being hunters and gatherers to farmers. Now, I don't know about you, but I grew up with the belief that it was very difficult to be a hunter and gatherer. Like you had to sit there and be like a cow all day, finding food, finding food, finding food, finding and collecting food, finding and collecting food. That's what I grew up with believing. And that in fact, with the development of farming, that there was so much more abundance available because it was more efficient and healthier for the human, and it was dedicated to one person, 5 people to an entire village or whatever would make just bountiful crops. And in reality, when I'd done my research on this, and this is not esoteric information, this is straight from the history books of an expert in Mesopotamia, a doctorate at Cal Polytech. She says, actually, farming is a lot more difficult and takes a lot more time and effort than the hunter and gatherer experience. And it's because, number one, you're limited to a certain number of crops. And this certain number of crops, because they're all clustered together, are vulnerable to disease and pests, right? They're not separated from each other. So it can become disease and pest ridden, number one. Number two, because of that, or if weather doesn't provide a good scenario in that limited small area, then you're out. You're starving, right? Number three, with that limited number of crops, actually the human being was receiving less quality nutrition because they didn't have the access to these wild berries and these other types of foods that were all over. So they were actually shrinking and becoming less healthy and less strong with farming. And on top of that, people clustering in cities, they found out, of course, produced disease because of, waste management, and then having all these animals all in one area, waste and disease problems. And so we sort of started this cog on a wheel thing for no reason, is what I'm saying, but not really. They said the reason was that if somebody was dedicated to farming, then they could settle somewhere and actually build a home and develop things like ceramics, metallurgy, blacksmithing. They could settle in and start developing some of these other arts that they didn't have the time to because they were shifting around, eating high quality food and becoming much more healthy. So you're right. That was kind of the beginning of becoming a cog in the wheel, because the creative ceramic then turned into a job that you had to gain profit from through trade. And then it all just sort of sprung out of control. And then after that, the kings developed. The kingship did not exist before that, right? And we know what happens when you have a king. You develop a military, and then you have to fight against another king that developed a military. And that's our origins of being cog and military driven in a society. And now it's gotten out of control.
Yeah. It's going to require a reset. Long ago, when all of these changes kind of came to me, and I realized that the differences in duality in, pick a situation, that those extremes have gotten so extreme that the people on the left are never going to see the same thing as the people on the right. Never. pick one topic, will you, please, and see if we can all kumbaya together. And my conclusion is that there isn't one.
Mhm.
That people have gone so different, and the only way that this is going to be remedied is when the Earth's shift resets all of that.
All of that.
Because we're done with third dimensional lessons and the crap in this density. We move into the next level. All of the preparations universally have been made for that, for humans to blossom in that new environment. Because let's be honest, everyone's been watching in the galaxy, watching what humanity can do. And we have been dicked with along the way. So we never really were able to blossom into, who we really could be. It's dicey because we're still demonstrating the same things that we've done before to damage the planet. We've been given access to technologies that can destroy as well as create. And that small handful of people that decided to explore that rabbit hole are damaging the planet. Here is why all of this extraterrestrial help is showing up now to protect us and to protect us from ourselves. We, as Irene pointed out a moment ago, we're here for 70, 80, 90 years, whatever that time frame is. And look at the damage we can do when we don't see ourselves as stewards of the planet. We don't take care of her. We strip her for her resources, and
Unnecessarily, because of what we could have developed over 100 years ago. Completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
And that's why it was available to us, so we wouldn't have to and still thrive, right? It just is, looking back, you're always looking back. Hindsight is 2020. It's insanity, the choices made compared to what was possible, right?
Well, you can see sovereignty just kind of melted away. People forgot that about themselves. And those people that kind of stepped up on their own volition and took advantage of others, whatever way you want to talk about it now, even our leaders, they don't even disguise with their agendas as opposed to their responsibility to care for their constituents. We've forgotten all about that. They don't even pretend to do that anymore. And here's where, we've just let that happen to ourselves. And I don't really know that, there's not going to be any civil outburst. You've seen that happen, not just here domestically, all over the world. You've seen these types of things where people just get fed up and all of a sudden, city centers are packed with people that have had enough. Well, we've been doing that for too long now, and the imbalance is still there. That's why I know that the amount of time we're here in this realm is finite. And so my eyes are on the prize at the end of the long game, not what happens every day on, what can trigger us about what's going on politically or economically. All of those things are also being twisted in the way they're being presented to us. So we never really get any transparencies on the true nature of things, only what people wish it to us to believe. And we all believe something. We're humans. We're designed to do that. And when you believe something, you can make that come into reality, whether it started there or not. So if you understand the power of your mind and what it can produce for you, you have the ability to co-create your existence. And when I say that, even 4 years ago, I thought that was a lovely notion and didn't really know what that meant. But I'm telling you, when your intent goes that way and you start to focus on the things that you really want to bring into your life from a gratitude perspective, they just show up. The people show up. The circumstances show up, and you don't really pay attention to all the lousy white noise around you. You just see the end game and where we're going. Because the tribe that showed up, they all emanate a light that you can't really put your finger on, but there's something different about them. And they feel like a puzzle piece here that belongs. We all kind of just vibrate and we talk about where we're going as opposed to dwell on the crap that, I don't want to say suffered, but we did. We had to learn good and bad lessons in order to, satisfy the, duality quotient on what we're trying to help source learn about itself. Every day you go out, you're having an experience you did not have before. You're not repeating things you did before. These are new things, and it's just an extension of you helping it to learn more about itself. Every time there's something new, you're going to learn the good stuff about it. Oh, yeah, and the bad stuff. Because, when I finally hammered that thing into together, yeah, I got a splinter along with it. So, these are all intentional lessons that some you signed up for, some along the journey you just got, but sooner or later, all of these things stored in your Akashic records benefit the collective. We all get to benefit from the lessons we've had. So there's really no good or bad in any of it. It's just duality and contrast we're learning, and it was part of our role as humans here on the planet. We are finally going to get to a stage shortly where humanity is no longer going to be interrupted in its evolution. And what technologies were available to us long ago that has been suppressed for a while is going to be restored to us again. So now, here, I really want to see what humanity can do when their DNA has been restored to its original design. And we get to do all the things that we were designed to do without manipulation from somewhere else. That took involvement from beings greater than ourselves. And it had to come from a time when, Earth and humanity was hands off. We were left to evolve on our own until we demonstrated what we could do. And when we started to destroy the planet, that's when outside resources stepped in. I keep pointing back to the timeline around World War II at the development of nuclear weapons and atomic bombs. There is where we demonstrated what we can do in our short little lives and leave that impression left on a planet. Not very good stewards at all. So something had to change. I think people's hearts are changing. Humanity, didn't want that. I still believe with all of me that every human being wants to be loved at its essence. No matter, who you are and how you play yourself out, that's what you want for yourself. How you go about it in angry ways or happy ways about how you want to get what you want. I still think that nobody would have signed up to be a soldier. If I had a choice to do anything I could to make me happy, would I tend to, find a cabin and fish, or would I want to be a soldier? I'd probably want to have the cabin and fish and enjoy my life as opposed to worrying about who might, take a shot at me or who I have to take a shot at. I think that there's grander ideas for us. And that, the military was just a ramification of fear that's been instilled in us, that we're afraid of something and we have to protect ourselves from it. And so lots of money is being spent on weapons now. And that technology wasn't given to us to develop weapons. It was given to us to advance our cultures. And, here's what we did with it. Enough of that.
And I couldn't agree with you more. And I even look at Diane Robbins' book. I almost look at it as a guidebook because, of course, the people that you connected with, Lowell, actually have that in their history as well, along with Atlantis. So when I listen to that Sharula Ducks, I say to myself, this is not only historical information, is it also a guidebook for us to follow, right? Because what they said was when the people of Lemuria, the spiritual leaders, knew that the sinking of the continent was imminent, they asked for entry into the Agartha network. They asked for entry, and they asked the galactics for permission to enter too. And though that spiritual hierarchy had to make a pact to ensure that they have learned their lessons of war and that they will move forward peacefully. They had to make that promise. And so I'm wondering to myself, amidst those that are part of the tribe and the people that will be gaining in the tribe, is that our role? Should we be asking for the help and asking for entry into Agartha? I mean, we've already had conversation that this is, I mean, I learned it the back way. Like I learned it the back way. I didn't know it existed to even ask for an opportunity. But now that I'm aware, is it my job on this side of the veil? Because I've already experienced it in the astral and sleep. Like my whole life is there. I can feel it. But in this side of the veil, is it our obligation? Is it one of those things where they're waiting for us to ask so that we can make some kind of pact? What do you think about that?
I don't think so. I think your awareness speaks to, the fact that you realize that it's there. But you've been dimension straddling for a while now. The fact that you can talk about these things intelligently demonstrates that you can see it from that perspective. And the more the people begin to talk that way, you see the differences in 3D and 4D, where everybody else walking around us, they're just happy with what 3D produces for them, and they have no expectations of anything larger than that. And it's not that we have these dreams and visions of something that we want beyond ourselves. It's our inner being talking to us that there is more, that they're trying to wake us up to, because Earth is in a cycle. All of life is in a cycle of evolution. And we happen to be here at a cusp on the planet when she is shifting from one to another. So if you don't think that this is cosmically historic, think again. I got no frame reference because I can't tell you how many planets this has happened on before. All I can tell you is it's happening here now, and we all feel it. So when I hear the words "feel it," that's what I wish for everybody, is that you develop that sixth sense of experiencing things from a feeling perspective. And then you'll be able to understand not just what I'm saying or what other people are saying. Now you'll feel the vibration of the earth and how she cycles and what she feels. That just becomes part of us. But when we are so closed in on the things that we give our attention to and never open ourselves up to something bigger than ourselves, you see it just by walking around anywhere on the planet here, watching the people around us and what's their focus today. I was thinking again today when I got up so early that I doubt whether people get up and spend the first 20 minutes of their day with just themselves, getting yourself set so that you've reached during your waking time that place where you're connected to everybody else, and then the rest of my day unfolds. Too many other people with family, jobs, hobbies, things that they have to get up and run and do, don't have the time to spend with themselves. And I just can't get there without finding that kind of space. And it's always accelerated when I'm out in nature. So I've been in Arizona now for a little over a week, and the energy here is different. The weather is great so that you can be outside and go find a spot to take it in for yourself. And never mind that at night the skies are clear. When you want to see activity out there, oh, it's happening. And me, as an evidentiary medium, I found myself an infrared camera and went out hoping to capture some activity. I had never seen the Pleiades with my naked eye, although I was told that you could. But when I got here, the sky was pointed in such a way that I thought I could see the cluster. And when I pulled out my infrared camera, I'll be damned if that isn't the Pleiades. So I finally got to see something that was on my bucket list forever. What there was two instances over an hour where I think I saw some interstellar craft moving. More importantly, there was orb activity on this property like crazy that it did capture. And so that's the point. When Dave talks about the things that are happening in real time, like when he predicted that, not predicted, he was told that there was going to be a landing last weekend. And then after the podcast, he went out and filmed craft. We're trying to tell people in real time what's going on now, not what happened 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago. We're trying to show you all this evidence so you get it now. And we're happy with that. We're delighted when we see the results of these things and we can somehow capture it for ourselves. If it turns on somebody else, great, but it was satisfaction for us enough that we saw something else again now that proves to us that these things are changing.
Amazing. It's an amazing time.
It is that. Maybe I see it's 11:05, so we may stop here. But I'm going to encourage you to, if you haven't been picking up on Dave's podcast or after on Thursdays, he's going to pick up on what I just mentioned. That last Saturday, after my podcast, he had sent a message indicating that he had heard from the Galactic Council of Scientists and whatever influences and references he had, connections from the Taurus cloud, that there was going to be visitation. And so when he said that, I always log it away. Then when he went outside and he filmed something that at first when I saw it, we all kind of thought it was a star. And when it moved over the top of a tree, you knew that this was not a star. And then when you saw a typical airplane fly across, you knew that this wasn't an airplane either. So all of the things that Dave's been talking about, and this extraordinary piece of video that he had, was like 3 minutes and 45 seconds long, is irrefutable. When he zeroed in on it, you can kind of see it kind of shape shifting into like a green or blue and a white color together. This phenomenon is no longer, if you're paying attention, it's not unknown to it. And anybody would have been able to see what Dave saw if they were looking at the sky and focusing on it for any length of time. Again, you have to be trained to kind of know what to look for. But now that we're all looking at the sky, we see things that just speak to us. If we believe, and I do, that greater contact is going to take place, not just from beyond Earth sentience, but from our inner Earth allies, all of that's taken place for a reason. I believe one of the reasons we have been expanded in our awareness of inner Earth cities is that the last time that Earth sustained catastrophes to the level that she did, where did we go? Many people, other than the areas on the planet that on the surface remained habitable, everybody else went underground. So it's no surprise that these areas are being brought into our awareness so that we know that there's other places that humanity can go when the time comes. Yeah. So we'll let Dave follow up on his experience on Thursday and just kind of underscore and, put an emphasis on his observations. It's not going to be the last one. I just love to see more validation coming when, I really didn't need it, but it's just one more. Every time I see another thing that just contributes to what I understand, it makes me happy. We want to share it with the tribe as soon as we can. I just think people need to know. They need to know. So any closing thoughts?
Sure. Yeah, I can share a little closing thoughts. Like for one, what all of a sudden showed up in my consciousness that I remember the first time I heard Dave speak, share about his experiences. I was driving home from my little garden back home, and I was still in another small town, and I saw this huge light fly over my car. Like, what was that? And it was like exactly that kind of ball of light. It was pretty low, and you just know, that it's not an airplane, it's not a lightning bulb, and still your mind wants to look it up. I want to make sure that I'm not like making it up, make believe. But it was really a huge light, and it did turn green, and then it just disappeared. But it made me so happy. So it's really when you see certain things, really notice how you feel, because your body senses. It's very delightful. It's very. You don't have to try to translate it with your mind, or never mind, or it was just whatever, but just feel the feeling. For me, I haven't even unwrapped that gift, what I've been given, but I just trust that in the right moment, it starts to make sense to me. And as I was listening to you, Lowell, it starts to kind of like unwrap itself in information. I don't even know how to explain it, but just to share with other people that the information, don't worry about if you don't get yet what you see or perceive. The first thing is just important. If you feel like exhilarated, or you feel light, or if you start to feel happy, it must be like a really nice feeling before you start to think anything. And then just allow the information. You haven't missed anything. The information will come, because your mind, your whole body needs to kind of like adjust to the information. And actually the information is help you adjust to be able to perceive what's being expressed.
That's
And
really
yes,
important for people to understand, is that when I first heard light language, especially from Yedya Maya, I didn't understand it. And at first, I just wanted to tune it out because I didn't understand it anyway. But something told me, tuck it away. Just put it away, listen to it. You might not understand it now, but the day is going to come when you will. And so, whatever interpreter came along that helped me understand what that was, it was just blossoming for future communications that way. And that's where my advice, to just stay open to things you have not yet experienced. Here is the reason why. It takes time. Even if I knew what that was, I've had a history of these extraordinary things that have happened now. It always takes me a few days to really understand what that was. So you can't really think at the moment you're going to really comprehend what it is that you're being shown when it's new, extraordinary things that we haven't understood in the first place. You just have to get used to that idea that there's going to be other magical appearing things that are going to happen in front of you. Take it at face value, and I trust in a few days, enough other pieces are going to fall into place, and you'll finally comprehend what that magic really meant. And once you get a hold of the first instance, it just becomes easier for you for the next one and the next one and the next one. And all this is happening to prepare us to be able to consume information that way. It's more of a feeling than it is any interpretation that my poor little brain is trying to express for me. It's something other than that.
Yeah. And one other thing that just pops up within me is it's really good to feel. Also, go back into the feeling when you were a kid and you're like, what, what am I? What is this kind of world about? It's like I know something else to be true. You know, that feeling. Remember that feeling, because that's where we're heading to. What you really know to be really true, what life could be about. That's your guideline where we're heading to. Because we have a unique unfoldment and a unique kind of promise, maybe, right? What you came here to do and to experience. And that's gonna knock on your door, you know, and it will. And it's not a dangerous knock. It's really like a nice knock on your door to, hey, you want to participate? It's safe. We're safe. We're really
Your
safe.
your observations of kids, that innocence and that trust level when we were young, we didn't know any better. What we experienced and we tucked it away. As we got older, we learned things to be afraid of. And so that's what gets in the way. We can no longer look at these things from just an anticipation of joy and whatever we're going to get out of it, because something else tells us that there's probably something that we should fear in here. And until we can get past that, we're just going to be stuck in this third dimensional construct because we can't remove ourselves from things that don't exist. And 90% of fear is exactly that. It's this notion we put in our head of nothing that ever materialized.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that life won't be shitty or anything, you know. It can still, you can
We're
still
still
have
learning
challenges.
lessons, right?
Yeah, we can still have
Yes.
challenges, and, you know, there's still suffering going on, but um, there's something sweet, you know. Somehow humans learn through suffering. We learn now, usually through the hard way, but once we get it, we get it, and we're going through the maybe more
Yeah.
difficult times. Some people may be out of the more difficult times. Some people are entering more difficult times. And this is this fluctuation, but this is also what keeps us as human alive and keeps us evolving into the next phase. And this time history will not repeat itself. It will not. This is the promise. We have the expiration date of this game or this experience. We're over it, and so we're moving over the hill. But that can be still quite challenging. But just when you keep from feeling yourself, I was here for a certain reason. Don't give up on it. And even if you give up on it, it's okay. You're still being carried through, you know, and you'll be remembered to not give up, you know, because we're here together in it. You're not alone. This is why we're waking up together, you know, and each in their own unique way, but we create a huge network of solidity, and this is based on trust and no competition, but we're here to carry each other through. And this is the heralding of a really new phase that we're just about entering into, you know. So no expectations how long it will take. The moment you start to feel it, you're already there, and the rest, the physicality will be last, you know. It takes longer time for the physicality to see it, but once you start to feel it, it feels much better in your body, you know. And that gives the opportunity for your body to transmute, your cells to transmute, and it's happening. It's irrefutable. It's you know, it's happening.
That's how I understand you manifest. When you bring something into your awareness, the next stage is it's brought into your physicality. That's how you co-create. You think of what it is, that scenario, and with all the detail that you can lend to it, and sooner or later that manifests. It happens.
Yeah, and I can
Paula,
really. Oh, sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, and I
Finish your
can
thought.
really, and I can really say it because I feel it. You know, I can feel it, and it's not a hopeful or like a fantasy anymore. To me, I just know it to be true. And once you know it, I feel it's my responsibility to express it, because you know, your thoughts hold power. You know, your belief, your essential belief hold power. This is what I choose to create, and no one is gonna make me undo this. It's impossible, because I'm wired to my creation, to our creation. It's my promise. So this is my promise to humanity and all of creation. So there you go.
There's an authentic sovereign being right there, people. Yeah. Any last words, Paula?
No, just enjoying you guys so much and appreciating everything, learning. And yeah, I loved what you said about history's not going to repeat itself, that we're going to make it over this hill. There are still some challenges, even in the awareness our thought has power. I'm still going through my challenges through it, right? I really am, even though I know this, the day in and day out life is still challenging for all of us, and delightful as well. It's still all those things. I guess it's the awareness of it now, as opposed to, just being jerked around back and forth when you think that you don't have any control over your life. So yeah, I love it. I loved hearing that history's not going to repeat itself. I could see the conviction in you, Irene. I could feel the conviction, and I'm so inspired by that. I'm excited to hear that. Yeah, wonderful.
Well, then we'll finish there. No, Earth is going to continue on. She's been a planet that would have been wiped out in the past under these circumstances, but we've all been informed that that is not what was in mind for humanity. There's lots of support for humanity. And so Earth, although, like I said, she was a planet that would have been destroyed and just started over in the past, that is not her destiny this time. So that's why all this other help has been coming our way. Just stay tuned while it all plays out, and find your vibration, like both Irene and Paula have just been talking about. That feeling is what I hope people get in touch with, and go beyond your five senses and what we humanly understand, to connecting with everything else. And once you're there, wow, then you get to draw on all of this other information that you don't know where it came from, but it's true. So we'll end there before I go off on another tangent. And I'll see you all next Saturday or next Thursday with Dave. So have a good weekend. Thank you all. Talk to you soon.
Bye. Thank you.